So, welcome everybody to the next session. We are still in this idea of preparing for retreat, entering into more intensive practice, and when you think about how to make your daily structure, there should be time for a variety of activities. So to stay in good balance, we have to think of body. There has to be always something for the body, physical exercise and so on. Can be prostrations if you're familiar with that in the good old Tibetan tradition. Can be yoga, can be tai chi, can be walks out in nature. Then of course we need to take care of basic necessities of life. And concerning our practice, the good old tradition says that we have 3 ways of learning the Dharma. They are called study, contemplation, and meditation. So when we structure for ourselves a day of retreat, we should know that it's not all about meditating. It's good to have time for study during the day and time for contemplation. Let's go through together the 3 of them. First, yes. Study. If you like to start with study.
I can start, yes. So, study is the one we are very familiar with normally as Western practitioners. Nevertheless, there might be a little bit slightly different advice on how to study, how to do that. So, of course, we have a lot of good teachings, good Dharma books now translated in English language and in many languages. And the phase of study is a phase of, definitely it involves like getting these informations, reading through, getting these new informations, getting these teachings. But I think it would be very good already to learn to do this at a slightly different pace than what we are used to do normally. The practice of study, it's really a practice, means that we are getting soaked, impregnated by the teaching, by the paths, by the guidance. So it's like receiving, whether it is an oral or written teaching, actually it is a phase where we are like letting everything in and trying to understand this from our experience already. That means to see already where our experience can follow this and to really do this like taking the time. That means I don't think we need to study at first a lot and then go into the next phases, but rather to study properly a little bit and then try to go to the next phase of contemplation, so integration on the emotional level and then meditation. So this is a way, a little bit already more contemplative way to study that we advise in this tradition. That is a way to let yourself be somehow guided already very much by your intuitive understanding. The intellectual understanding is very active, so the mind is sharp. One understands the concept, one works a lot with the thinking mind, but there is already a deeper, more intuitive quality which is we are in contact with while doing that. And a good way to make sure that we are in contact is to stop regularly in the middle of study and to give the time for what is studied to start to go deeper in the next stages. So that would be how I would present it.
Maybe we add the old meaning of the word study. Before there existed books, was listening. So you study with someone. So you actually listen to the oral teachings of someone like you're listening now. And again, like we said in the passage about awareness, we listen from the heart. So the words, they can be treacherous, they can be misleading. We might misunderstand them, but we try to understand the intention behind the words. So this is with this deeper study is to be able to get the message behind the words. And this is a way of listening that is so profound that afterwards, because you remember really what wanted to be expressed, that you can repeat the teaching. You have been following so well with your heart that you have kind of slipped into the mind of the one explaining, that you can actually pass it on to others. The sign of good study is, I mean, you might not be able to do that in the first time, but the aim is to be able to give an accurate summary of what was being learned, what was being taught. So imagine you would be giving to your friend a summary of what is explained now. You would be able to accurately convey the meaning. Then the process of study has been accomplished. So from studying very simple text and teachings, like now, which are nevertheless profound, you can go to very elaborate studies. Like the book we are not studying now, but we are normally studying together here, The Moonbeams of Mahamudra. This is so extensive, there are so many details in there that actually it's difficult to study it alone, except if you have received a lot of other instructions. So you choose for your study a text or an audio, a video, which is inspiring and clear. And then you try to go to the next step. Next step, contemplation. So the difference between study and contemplation is that now, from the study, you apply everything to yourself. So if I hear about one of the next subjects will be, for example, the teaching on change, which is so important, then I listen, I understand the teaching, and then the contemplation begins with the deep reflection, and what does that mean to me in my experience? So if you take any Dharma book, any good book on development and inner development, you would read a paragraph, a quote, and you would understand it intellectually. This is study. And then you would perhaps close your eyes, you would anyhow turn the attention inwards, and then reflect on, if I take this to heart, what would change? How does my perspective change? How would my priorities change? How would my practice, my way of acting change? You know, like the idea is to use what's being learned for a process of transformation. This would be my explanation of deep reflection or contemplation. How is yours?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So this stage of contemplation is already an integration of the teaching in the core of your being. It's already an integration on the emotional level taking place. That means that out of that there is a capacity, there is a transformative power which is already effective, which is already taking place. So you start to see, the more contemplation there is, the more you start to see that it's actually the teachings become part of you in a more and more natural way. It's like it enters your system, and it becomes slowly starts to become intuitively who you are, so to speak, where you are seeing things from. So this is already becoming a much closer guide, closer guidance. The phase of study is still somehow, in comparison, more on the outer level, where there you are already reaching deeper within the heart. And this process goes on and on up to the phase of the stage of meditation. And somebody who has contemplated a lot, reflected in this way, integrated in this way, usually would be able not only to repeat the teaching, but also to explain the teaching in his or own words, translating the teaching in a very practical, very pragmatic way, also to see its relevance in the modern world, to be able to really, there is a flexibility coming from this stage. It's a stage where you become able to speak from the Dharma, with the Dharma, things that you have also not read, not heard before. You start to develop this capacity to actually let the teaching become alive in you and speak through you. Yeah, in a very, very simple way, very natural way. So that's already a sign of deep integration. Nevertheless, big part of it is still conceptual. It is still in a frame of conceptual thinking. So it is already integrated, but it is still most of the time colored by some dualistic thinking and conceptual grasping. The last stage, the stage of meditation, is, you can say, the final integration of the teaching. That is, in my understanding, that is reaching deeper than even the emotional level, that is reaching, actually, you can say, to the most intuitive level, to the gut level, we could say. It is reaching to the area where it becomes goes even beyond words. It reaches, you can say, the stage of the inexpressible. That means that it is not depending anymore. It is like just it reaching the stages of being. So by developing these capacities through deep reflection, contemplation, you are slowly getting closer and closer to the feeling of the teaching within your system, and there is less and less grasping, less and less focusing on the words, on the expression, on the understanding of the teaching. And it becomes like it resonates, you can say. So, for example, if you meditate on love, you have a lot this phase of studying, while loving kindness is a incredible quality, very precious quality. Then you have the phase of developing all the quality of love and expanding that more and more through your contemplation, how beneficial that is, and starting to more and more radiate this quality. And then in a deeper stage, it starts to become simply, it happens by itself, and it is not called love anymore. The quality of loving kindness is simply resonating or pervading your whole being. So that is a stage where you also don't reference it as love so much necessarily. Sometimes you do, sometimes not. But it's very fluid, and it's a quality of being. So this is a stage where the conceptual levels plays a smaller and smaller role, up to the point where it doesn't play any role anymore, which is a non-dual meditation, an experience of non-duality. Yeah, that would be then as far as it can go. And there are many intermediary stages, but it tends to go more and more into what we call samadhi, which is like a spontaneous resonance, which sustains itself and does not need to be reactivated by conceptual thinking. So the quality simply takes over and takes the whole room. That is the stage of meditation.
Yes. This is simple being. The journey leads us into simply being undistractedly in that presence, in that awareness. And the steps before, they clear the path. with the study, with listening to the teachers, we are challenging our convictions, our views. We are listening to another view of seeing life. And then we re-examine our experience. We look at it. That's contemplation. And we begin to see the other possibilities as just as valid as our previous possibilities, and maybe more helpful. The new view, the new way of seeing life emerges from applying what we have heard in contemplation. And then sitting with that new view, with that view, for example, from an awakened heart, from a loving heart. Yeah, we meet a teacher, man or woman, we listen to the teaching, we hear the transmission of wisdom from the ages, and we feel something there which touches us and convinces us, why not try to look at the world a little bit like that? We try it out, and we notice how mind and heart open. And then when it opens, we don't do anything anymore. Finished with contemplation, finished with intellect, with trying to do something. We are simply there, in that resonance, like Johan was saying. Simply being. Now you will see that all techniques, whatever we will teach you, whatever other teachers teach you, they go through these stages. There is a learning process of taking in information, checking that with our own experience, and if it's beneficial, something opens, which leads us over into a non-conceptual presence. And if we trust that, we let go into that, it opens up even as far as the experience without a center, without separation, this non-dual experience. All Dharma practices are like that. So, we could start the next subject. We will lead you now through a series of contemplations. The listening to what we are going to say is the study process, but for many of you it's very familiar, but others who are now going to listen to the video, for them it will be new. The first aspect we would like to contemplate with you is how precious this present experience is. Usually in the Buddhist teachings we talk about the precious human life or the precious human body. Well, the body is important, the human body, because it gives us the opportunity to experience this life. And why is it so precious? Because this is where we can learn. You have a good mixture of suffering and happiness. We have the possibility to learn from the suffering and to open up. And this is very particular now. You can see this with the current corona wave, that everywhere people want to learn from it. And this is very specific about human existence. It's a way of being in this world, always learning from the experience. So it is precious in the sense that it has enough suffering, enough stress to learn from. It is precious because we have the possibility to become free, to awaken, to develop our innermost potential. And then it's not in general only precious, and then this situation is like awkward, it's like a mistake in life. Crisis was not planned. No. Exactly in the middle of being sick, in the middle of dying. And I'm not joking. I have accompanied people in the dying process. Every moment of breathing in and breathing out, every moment of being there is a precious moment that potentially can open up completely into a perfect experience of simply being. Without fear, fully aware, completely open, warm heart, all the qualities there. There is no situation in life in which this is not possible. Even if outwardly we will do everything that we can to change a painful situation, to change a dangerous situation, a terrible situation, we will take care. But as a moment of experience, it is always very precious. It's always something to learn from, always something to open up to, always something to share, an opportunity for the inner qualities to manifest. I would see it like that.
So basically, that's a contemplation about all the good that we have, all the opportunities that we have. I think usually we tend to focus a little bit too often, at least, if not always, but a little bit too often on what we don't have, what is not yet happening, or what we are wishing for, what we are aspiring to. So it's a kind of future-oriented mind that we tend to develop, and creates a sense of waiting, a sense of expectation, a sense of delaying somehow a good part of the life which is to come. Yeah? And this particular contemplation about that we call traditionally the precious human existence, yes, has a lot to do with reversing that tendency. So it has a lot to do with trying to see all the qualities that are there. So like Tillman explained, that every situation is actually full of resources. Every situation is an opportunity to go deeper in our understanding of mind, awareness, qualities. And in that way, somehow, we are always brought back into more and more resources. Yeah? So this is not meant artificially by just kind of wishful thinking that everything is all right and everything is fine. It is not at all like this. It really integrates the painful aspect of life. It really integrates the challenges. They are experienced as challenges. Pain is experienced as pain most of the time. But within that, even within that, there is a lot of richness that we can discover. And there is a lot of space around that. There are a lot of opportunities. We live in a world where actually we have an incredible amount of freedoms, plural. So many freedoms. Freedoms of practicing our spiritual paths being the most important of all, probably, yes? So we start to develop new antennas about actually all what we have, all what is allowed, all what is possible. And in the realm of mind, when you start to be interested in mind as the main thing, then actually everything is possible. Yeah, the resources are always there, if only we turn inwards. So traditionally, there are long lists of different freedoms that we have for many of us, freedom to live in a free country, for example, to be able to think and speak like we wish, to do our spiritual practice, all of that. Freedom right now to have a body which allows us to, a body and a mind which are healthy enough to allow us to practice the spiritual path fully. All of that is things that are actually we tend to forget. We take them for granted. We are so used to live with that as a given, something that is always there, that we forget how precious that is, how helpful that is. And we forget to rejoice about it, we forget to be grateful about it, which is, you can say, the next topic, the next where this contemplation leads to. This is actually a contemplation leading us into very, very basic feelings of gratitude. Gratitude without reason other than having a body which is sound enough and a mind which is sound enough to practice the path. And in order to do this, to really feel this gratitude and so on, we look around. We feel around. We open up also to what is going on. We see all these different situations, these different countries, these different people. We have none of that. We will never have these opportunities for so many reasons, political reasons, religious reasons, or because individually people have obstacles, have such a weak body that it's so impossible to make one prostration, or because the mind is psychologically disturbed in such a way that it's very difficult to concentrate and to recite a mantra. All of this is so usually taken for granted, yeah? So by turning towards that and also so developing more and more compassion, automatically we start to rejoice in also what is there, this richness that is always accompanying us, which is never letting us down. And that means that by doing that, by becoming familiar with this practice, that means that, of course, we have our ups and downs, but that means that even during difficult moments, we can see this richness still there, yeah? And it provides a tremendous help, tremendous support in all the ups and downs of life, yeah? So we become able to develop this immense appreciation, and that is helping us to develop this quality of the soft heart very much.
This is our first practice. Every morning, if possible, every session, we start with rejoicing. I want to give you an example. This morning, I had the opportunity to talk with the farmer's lady, our neighbor, who just lost her husband 10 days ago. Sudden death. She's in the middle of Corona crisis, alone with all her 50 cows and cattle, you know? It was incredible. We were standing out there. She was rejoicing that her husband had such a sudden death. She was rejoicing in the sun. She was rejoicing to be able to sit with the cows. She was rejoicing about you because you're so gentle neighbors and everyone has a nice word and can always stop for a chat. She was rejoicing in the fact of being allowed to cook 3 times a day for her son. It was incredible. I was listening to this woman and she just lost her husband. They were just 50 years married, you know, and she was standing out there and she said, I can only walk with crutches. I cannot do anything anymore. But I'm so happy to be able to cook. I'm so happy that my daughter is living down there, just the house below. And so on, she was in this practice of rejoicing And definitely, she does not know what future will bring. You understand? Even simple people can rejoice without ever having heard this kind of encouragement, this kind of teaching. And we can do that. Let's make it a practice to rejoice about many, many things every morning. So we are sure not to start the day with depression, but with joy, with rejoicing in whatever is there. The idea is to counterbalance our fantastic capacity to see what's not going well. This is very developed for most people. So we are balancing that. We are not trying to paint the world in pink. We are only balancing our tendency to overvalue difficulties.